What happens when a white cab driver insults a black man trying to reach a life-changing interview? He didn't know who was quietly riding in the back seat. What happened next turned the whole ride upside down. Before we begin the story, write in the comments where you are watching us from. I should have known the day would start sideways the moment I stepped out my door and felt that cold Detroit wind slap me like it had something to prove. But I kept moving, because that's what a man's gotta do, right? Just around the corner, I saw Miss Etta, all 90 pounds of her, wrestling with grocery bags bigger than her halfway up her porch. So I did what Mama raised me to do. I helped her. Simple as that. She looked up, eyes shining, and called me her angel. Funny how folks see angels in people who barely holding it together themselves. My phone buzzed, reminding me I had an interview across town, something I had been waiting for like a lifeline. Car in the shop, bus too slow, so I flagged down a yellow cab, thinking this was just a ride, nothing more. The driver's window rolled down, and this white man with a cheap baseball cap and chewed-up gum between his teeth gave me a look like I was the morning problem he didn't ask for. I let it slide. I had bigger things to focus on. Sliding into that back seat, I held my folder with my resume like it was the last piece of hope I had left. The cab smelled like stale coffee and old arguments, and the radio was mumbling sports scores that didn't matter to me one bit. We rolled through a couple of lights before the driver decided silence was too much work for him. "You people never tip anyway," he muttered, looking at me through that rear-view mirror like he was waiting for a fight he'd already won in his head. I closed my eyes, taking in a breath so deep it might have reached my spine, because I knew where this was going. But I kept quiet. Today was too important for me to get caught up in nonsense. But silence didn't slow him down. Always late, always loud, always got excuses, he kept going, tapping the wheel like he was drumming up courage, or maybe just enjoying the sound of his own ignorance. I looked out the window, watching the city slide by, every block reminding me why I was chasing this job, why I needed to walk in that interview room with my head up, but his words kept crawling through that cab like roaches you can't shake. "You probably going somewhere you can't even afford," he said, louder this time, like he needed me to hear it clear. That's when I felt it, that heat in my chest, that tightness that comes when you know you're being disrespected, but you got too much to lose to let it pull you under. I could hear my mother's voice telling me, "Keep your eyes on what matters, baby." The driver chuckled to himself, looking back at me again. "Man, bet you don't even got a real job, huh?" His laugh was dry, like he had said something funny. I gripped that folder harder, so hard the edges bent under my fingers. I thought about my niece, about how I promised her I would be at her recital tonight, how I wanted her to see me as someone who never backed down, but also knew when to stay focused. The traffic lights felt longer, the air thicker, each second in that cab feeling like a test I didn't sign up for. He turned up the radio, some news about a community center being built on the east side, and he scoffed, "Waste of taxpayers' money." I let out a breath, a slow one, because I was tired. Tired of having to swallow pride to survive another day, tired of being judged by strangers who thought they knew my whole story with one glance. Then he turned down the radio and looked at me, smirking. "People like you should know their place." That was it. That was the moment the ride became something else, something heavy and sharp. But I kept my eyes on that folder, reminding myself of what I was fighting for. of why I couldn't let his words drag me down to a place I wouldn't come back from. The cab kept moving, but inside something was shifting. I wasn't sure what, but I could feel it, like thunder you hear before the rain comes. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how this unfolds. The cab rattled over potholes like it had something personal against my spine, every bump reminding me I was riding in the back of a man's car who had already decided who I was before I even opened my mouth. I looked out the window, watching Detroit move, the streets alive with people chasing buses, kids laughing on cracked sidewalks, grandmothers pulling carts home from the corner store. It was all a reminder of why I couldn't lose focus, even with this man in the front seat throwing his words like stones. He checked me in the mirror again, chewing on that gum like it was the last bit of control he had. "Bet you're late for whatever you people call important," he said, shaking his head, as if my life was a joke only he got to laugh at. I turned my head slowly, letting my eyes meet his in that mirror. I didn't say a word, but I made sure he saw me. Saw that I wasn't about to sink under the weight of his small words. "Oh, you got nothing to say?" he continued, turning down the radio, leaning back like he was settling in for a show he thought he was directing. "Thought so." I took a breath, deep, controlled. My mother always said, "Don't let a fool make you forget who you are." And I wasn't about to forget. Not today. Traffic slowed down, cars honking, engines growling, as if the whole street was holding its breath. The driver drummed his fingers on the wheel, tapping out a rhythm that set my teeth on edge. "Man, they out here giving jobs to anybody these days, huh?" he said, laughing to himself. "Next thing you know, one of you will be trying to be my boss." That laugh, the way it cut through the cab, felt like a slap I couldn't dodge. I turned my head, looking down at my folder, the edges still bent from how hard I held it earlier. This folder wasn't just paper. It was everything I had been fighting for, everything I was trying to build, despite days like this. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, the sound slicing through the air. I wondered who needed help, who was praying someone would show up for them. For a moment, I thought about all the times I needed someone to show up for me, how often folks like me got told to wait, to calm down, to swallow it all and keep moving. The cab crept forward, and the driver started humming, tapping the meter, looking back again. "You know, back in the day, people like you knew better than to look at me like that," he said, his voice calm, like he was stating the weather. I raised an eyebrow, letting a small, sharp smile cross my face. Back in the day, I thought. Man, you living in the wrong day. But I stayed quiet, because sometimes the best way to fight is to let your silence speak louder than any words could. We hit another red light, the sun breaking through gray clouds, painting the cracked windshield gold for a moment before disappearing again. It was a small moment of beauty in a ride that felt like it was trying to drain every bit of hope I had left. A mother crossed the street with her son, holding his hand tight. He pointed at the cab, his eyes wide with the wonder only kids have, not yet touched by the weight of what the world might throw at him just because of who he is. I looked at that kid and remembered why I couldn't break, why I couldn't let this ride define me. The driver turned the radio back up, a talk show host shouting about politics, blaming people like me for problems we didn't create, problems we were often left to clean up. The driver nodded along, glancing back at me with a smirk, as if he expected me to argue, to give him a reason to unleash more. But I didn't. I sat there, holding my folder, feeling the weight of the words unsaid, the fight bubbling in my chest, waiting for the moment when I would be allowed to speak on my terms, not his. The cab moved forward again slowly, each block taking longer than the last. The driver's words didn't stop, but they started to fade, like background noise you learn to ignore because your purpose is bigger than their noise. And inside, I was steady, reminding myself, this ride would end, but who I am would not. This is it. Everything you've been waiting for is right here. Stay tuned to see how our hero stood his ground when it mattered most. That cab rolled up to the curb like it was tired of itself, brakes squeaking, engine coughing. The office building across the street looked like hope dressed in glass and steel, reflecting a sky that finally decided to clear. I could see people lining up inside, clutching folders like mine, each one carrying stories the world might never hear. The driver, still chewing that gum, turned around slow, a smirk stretching across his face like he just told the best joke nobody else found funny. "We're here," he said, tapping the meter. "Try not to waste their time in there." My fingers tightened around my folder. I felt every second of that ride hanging in the air between us. But before I could open the door, a voice I hadn't heard all ride cut through the cab like a warm blade. "Is that how you treat every customer? Or just the ones you think won't speak up?" The driver's smirk fell off his face like a bad habit. He turned around, eyes wide, swallowing hard because sitting in the far back, shadowed by the cab's dirty window, was a man in a dark blue suit, polished shoes, and a calm that could silence a room. I blinked, surprised, but stayed still, letting the moment breathe. The man in the suit leaned forward, pulling out a small badge that caught the morning light. "Department of Civil Rights Oversight," he said, his voice steady, low, like he was used to people listening the first time he spoke. The driver's jaw worked, trying to find words that wouldn't come. I didn't mean—" "Oh, you meant it," the man said, holding up a small recorder, the red light blinking like a heartbeat. "I've been here the whole ride, documenting every word you said. Every single word." The silence in that cab was heavy, but it was the kind of heavy that felt right, the kind that comes when the truth is too big to ignore. I let out a slow breath, sitting up straighter, feeling the weight that had pressed on my shoulders for the past 20 minutes start to lift, piece by piece. The driver tried to laugh, a small, nervous sound that died before it left his throat. "Look, I was just joking, man. You know how it is." "No, I don't," the man in the suit said, sliding a business card onto the seat. "Your company and the city's transportation board will know too." Outside, the city kept moving, cars honking, people walking, life going on like it always does. But inside that cab, time paused, letting that driver sit in the mess he made with his own mouth. The man in the suit turned his eyes to me, nodding once, firm but kind. "You're free to go, and good luck in there." I nodded back. My voice caught in my chest for a second before it came out. "Thank you." As I stepped out, the cold air hit me, but it didn't feel harsh anymore. It felt like fresh air, like a reset I didn't know I needed. I looked up at that building again, holding my folder, the bent edges now a reminder that I was still here, still standing. The cab door slammed shut behind me, the driver's face pale in the window as the man in the suit made a quiet call. I didn't need to know what was said. That wasn't my fight anymore. I crossed the street, each step solid, each breath a reminder that dignity isn't something you give away just because someone tries to take it. The glass doors opened, and I walked in, ready. And in that moment, I realized something. We carry the weight of 1,000 small moments of disrespect, but we also carry the strength to keep walking, to keep showing up, to keep being exactly who we are, no matter who tries to tell us otherwise. Life outside didn't pause for me, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was fighting alone.